Monarchy's return to mainstream. Overthrown in 1979 by Khomeini, burning Iran presents opportunity. The exiled prince gains support. This might be the last battle, but will Pahlavi return?
On January 16, 1979, as millions of Iranians flooded the streets demanding the end of monarchy, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi boarded a plane out of Tehran. Overnight, Reza Pahlavi went from crown prince to a man in permanent exile. Now there are whispers that he might be coming back. Listen in to this as a proof of the return. The protesters in Iran are chanting in Farsi that Pahlavi will return. There was also Iran's flag with Reza Pahlavi's face printed on it. Iran's monarchy flag was changed after the 1979 revolution. People came onto the streets chanting Reza Pahlavi's return as a response to this video message posted by the exiled crown prince. Take a listen.
و قطعا توجه کردید که ازدحام جمعیت باعث میشه که نیروها پس بروند و امکان ریزش رو به سمت شما بیشتر میکنن. بنابراین مهم استش که این انضباط و گستردگی رو حفظ بکنیم. من اولین فراخوان خود را امروز با شما در میان میگذارم و از شما دعوت میکنم که این جمعه و پنجشنبه 18 و 19 دی ماه را سر ساعت 8 شب همگی چه در خیابانها یا حتی از منازل خودتون شروع به شعار سر دادن بکنید. در نتیجه بازخورد این حرکت‌ها من فراخوان‌های بعدی رو به شما اعلام خواهم کرد.
This message resulted in tens of thousands of Iranians filling the streets of Tehran and other major cities this week against the religious clerical leadership led by the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini. Even as the government cut off internet and phone services nationwide, the demonstrations marked a dramatic new phase in unrest that began more than a week ago over economic hardship and are now testing public support for figures once thought distant from everyday Iranians. Let's understand who is this exiled crown prince whose return has united protesters across 90 cities in Iran. Reza Pahlavi was born on the 31st of October 1960 in Tehran, the eldest son of Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, Iran's last monarch, and Empress Farah. His birth was marked by grand symbolism. The Shah pardoned 98 political prisoners, and the government announced a 20% reduction in income tax, gestures meant to signal continuity, stability, and goodwill under the monarchy. Reza Pahlavi grew up within Iran's royal household alongside his siblings Farhanaz, Ali Reza, and Leela, and his half-sister Shahnaz in 1967. During his father's coronation, he was formally named Crown Prince. His early education took place at the Reza Pahlavi School, a private institution located inside the royal palace and reserved exclusively for members of the imperial family and close court associates. As the heir apparent, Reza Pahlavi was groomed for leadership within the framework of Iran's monarchy. In 1978, he traveled to the United States to undergo pilot training as a cadet of the Imperial Iranian Air Force. He enrolled at Reese Air Force Base in Lubbock, Texas, where he was one of 43 cadets selected for an intensive one-year pilot training program. The course included flying the Cessna T-37 Tweet and the Northrop T-38 Talon aircraft typically used to train fighter pilots. However, history intervened. In early 1979, the Iranian Revolution led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini overthrew the Shah and dismantled the monarchy. As Iran descended into upheaval, Reza Pahlavi was forced to leave the United States training program in March 1979, nearly 4 months earlier than planned. The revolution marked the end of the Pahlavi dynasty's rule and the beginning of the Islamic Republic. The fall of the monarchy was followed by years of exile for the royal family. When Mohammad Reza Pahlavi died on the 27th of July 1980, Empress Farah declared herself regent, a symbolic title reflecting continuity rather than power. A few months later, on his 20th birthday, Reza Pahlavi declared himself Reza Shah II, claiming succession as the rightful heir to the Iranian throne. The declaration, however, was swiftly dismissed by Washington spokesperson for the US State Department. They publicly distanced the American government from Reza Pahlavi, stating that the US recognized the post-revolutionary Iranian government and did not intend to support any restoration of monarchy. Despite this, Reza Pahlavi did not disappear from political calculations entirely. In the early 1980s, efforts were reportedly made by various international actors to explore the possibility of reinstalling him as Iran's leader. In a 1982 BBC radio interview, Yaakov Nimrodi, the Israeli intelligence figure, claimed that he, along with others, had discussed a coup plan involving Reza Pahlavi. According to later accounts, the plan was abandoned amidst changing political calculations in Israel and concerns over deeper regional entanglement. By the mid-1980s, Reza Pahlavi had begun reshaping his public identity. On the 1st of May 1986, he announced that he had formed a government in exile aimed at restoring a constitutional monarchy in Iran rather than an absolute one. Over time, his rhetoric evolved further, increasingly emphasizing democracy over dynasty rule. Living largely in the US since 1980, Reza Pahlavi emerged as a consistent and vocal critic of the Islamic Republic. He pursued higher education, earning a degree in political science from the University of Southern California. In the decades that followed, Pahlavi reframed his political vision while continuing to assert his legitimacy as the son of Iran's last Shah. He increasingly advocated a secular, democratic and parliamentary system for the country. His public statements emphasized that Iran's future should be decided through a national referendum, allowing Iranians themselves to choose between a republic and constitutional monarchy or another form of governance. In 2013, he co-founded the Iran National Council, a platform intended to unify opposition voices both inside and outside Iran. Though he held no formal political office, Pahlavi became a symbolic figure for many Iranian expatriates and opposition groups seeking regime change. His message gained renewed traction amidst recurring waves of unrest in Iran during protests in 2022, triggered by events such as the Abadan building collapse and fueled by economic hardship and state repression. Pahlavi predicted that the Islamic Republic was approaching collapse. He cited incidents including the shooting down of Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752, restrictions on COVID-19 vaccines, and soaring food prices as examples of government mismanagement that had deepened public anger. He called on members of Iran's security forces to engage in peaceful resistance and urged opposition groups to form a coordinated front. In March 2023, Reza Pahlavi toured the UK and delivered a high-profile speech at the Oxford Union. He argued that secularism was a prerequisite for democracy and criticized Islamic regimes for failing to uphold freedom of religion. He also called for the restoration of internet access in Iran to allow opposition movements to communicate and stressed the importance of non-violent resistance. A large demonstration in support of him took place outside the venue. A month later, in April 2023, Pahlavi and his wife Yasmin visited Israel, describing the trip as an effort to rebuild historic ties between Iranians and Israelis, a move that drew both praise and criticism across the region. In recent years, Pahlavi has openly described himself not as a future ruler, but as a steward of a national transition to democracy. His appeal, however, continues to be tested amongst ordinary Iranians, many of whom have lived their entire lives under the Islamic Republic. In February 2025, he was invited to attend the Munich Security Conference, an invitation that was later withdrawn following pressure from Tehran. Months later, amidst the Iran-Israel war, Pahlavi issued a statement declaring that the Islamic Republic was on the verge of collapse, citing internal fractures and defections within the regime. Earlier this week, he reinforced that message in an opinion piece published in the Washington Post. He argued that Iran's leadership was weaker and more divided than at any time since 1979, and that mass arrests, executions and repression revealed a regime acting out of fear. He claimed protests had spread to over 100 cities, with demonstrators chanting his name alongside calls for freedom and national unity. In the same piece and on a post on X, Reza Pahlavi thanked US President Donald Trump for promising to hold Iran accountable, referring to him as the leader of the free world. More than 4 decades after being forced into exile, Reza Pahlavi remains a contested figure caught between legacy, reinvention, monarchy and democracy, symbolism and political reality. Whether his voice translates into leadership on the ground in Iran remains an open question, but his presence in the conversation about Iran's future is unmistakable.
Monarchies returned to mainstream. Overthrown in 1979 by Khomeini, burning Iran presents opportunity. The exiled prince gains support. This might be the last battle, but will Pahlavi return?